Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being in attendance at the May 28th, 2025 meeting of the Knoxville Regional Transportation Planning Organization Executive Board. The first order of business is to determine a quorum. So could we please call roll and do that?
Yes, good morning. If you are serving as a proxy, if you'll reply with your name when I call the elected official's name. Mayor Tanya Martin, Mayor Tony Akins.
Here. Here. Praying for Scott Kelso.
Thank you. Mayor Roland Bradshaw, Mayor Scott Burton,
There again for Scott Burton.
Mr. Troy Ebert,
Stacy Morrison representing TDOT and the governor.
Mayor Terry Frank, Mayor Warren Gooch, Mayor Jeff Harris,
Here.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs,
Here.
Mayor India Kincannon, Vice Mayor Tommy Smith,
Andrew Roberto here for City Council.
Mayor Ed Mitchell,
Don Walker here for Mayor Ed Mitchell.
Commissioner Gina Oster,
Commissioner Larson J. here for Gene Oster.
Commissioner Harold Pittner, Trustee Justin Biggs, Mr. Isaac Thorne,
Here.
Mayor Larry Waters,
James Temple for Mayor Waters.
Mayor Andy White, Mayor Ron Williams.
Present.
That's 13 present, sir.
Thank you. Do we have anyone participating on Zoom? All right, thank you. And are there any amendments to the agenda? So now we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the April 30th, 2025 Executive Board meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to the FTA Section 5310 designated recipient status. And Doug, you'll be presenting that, or?
Yes, this is a proposal we are bringing to you at the board. Go ahead and go to the first slide. If you'll remember, when you see 5310, that's just one of several grant programs that the Federal Transit Administration manages, and the TPOe is the current manager here in our urban area. And if this is when we award funds to nonprofits and human service agencies to purchase vans. Some examples in the past have been like vans to Sertoma Center, Emory Valley Center, Sunshine Industries. We also award funds for some volunteer assisted transportation programs, and that's like through the CAC volunteer program, Blount County Smiles, Sevier County Live It, and some ETHRA. And we've been managing that for some time, and we have a proposal that we will work with partnership to shift some of that day-to-day responsibility to CAC. Now, we won't get rid of all of it. The TPO will still be involved with project selection and planning. Ultimately, to make this happen, we have to have a motion to the executive board to ask the governor to designate CAC the recipient. And I have a couple more slides just for some basic information for you. Once again, this comes from the Federal Transit Administration, and we started getting these funds way back in 2006. At that time, it was more of a discretionary program. It was called the New Freedom Program. Eventually, FTA merged it all together in the 5310 program in 2013, and they asked at that time that we designate a recipient, which was, as the board decided, it would be the TPO. This funding is specifically for seniors and individuals with disabilities. It comes to a formula to our urban area based on the number of seniors or people who are disabled based on the U.S. Census. We get about $850,000 annually. And for our urban area, this is funding that's good for not only City of Knoxville, Knox County, but Blount County, Loudoun County, and Anderson County. The funding must be matched. There's a rule in there that we have to award at least 55% to like vans and stuff. We can do 100% to vans, but we have to do at least 55%. If we want to do some operating or administration, that can be taken out of that 45%.
What's the match?
There is no match. Well, okay, capital match is 80-20. Typically, TDOT will participate in half of it, so it ends up being 80-10-10. Operating is 50-25-25. Admin is 100%. There is no match for any administration that you take out of it, but you're limited to just 10%. That's all you can. That's the most you can take out for admin. And then part of this is you're required to do a human service transportation coordination plan, and we update that periodically. In fact, we'll be working on it next year. And the executive board has to pass that plan, and that lays out the strategies and what types of programs we want to fund. So in that plan, over the years, our region has said they wanted to keep funding the vans and these volunteer programs. Next slide. From our side, it takes a lot of time and resources to manage this program. It's not really in keeping with the overall TPO function, which is planning. We're the only MPO in the state that manages this program, and I've looked nationwide. There's about maybe 10% of the MPOs nationwide that manages, and most of them are very large. Like, by example, the Atlanta MPO, they manage all the FTA fund, like the fund that comes to the city, the 53, the Atlanta MPO manages all of the FTA funds, but they have a big, huge staff. So I'm not going to go through all the responsibilities, but you have to prepare grants, you have to do lots of reporting, you have to go out and inspect the vehicles that we award, you have to be sure they're maintained. If you do a procurement, you have to be sure it meets all the federal and state requirements. So for someone like the TPO who's not working in this area day in and day out, it's a struggle for us to do it. Like Kat, Stacy, and Ethra, they work in this type of stuff every day, so it's a little bit easier for them to be able to manage this program. The last couple of things is CAC is FTA and TDOT compliant. They do get the FTA reviews. Their experience in managing grants and distributing these types of funds, there's other programs that CAC manages that are very similar to this. And even though they're Knox County CAC, they do manage programs that are outside the county. They have a great experience working with Blount County, and I know they've done some workforce grants that have been all of like 16 counties before. We have discussed this with Kat and Ethra, and they're supportive of the move. And we're going to work on an agreement how we'll transition this. And as I mentioned, as they'll do kind of the behind the scenes day to day, the TPO still will be involved in project selection and preparing the human service coordination plan. And any projects that we fund still have to come, because those are federal funds, they still have to be put into the TIP, so they have to come in front of the executive board to be approved. So you'll still be kind of overseeing the program at that level. That's kind of the reasoning why. I can answer any questions. Otherwise, the technical committee did recommend approving this. Is there any questions?
Okay, we need a motion to approve this.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. On to the FY 26-29 Transportation Improvement Program Development Update. And this will be presented by Craig.
Yep, thank you. This is, just as it describes, an update on where we are in the development of the next Transportation Improvement Program. We update this document every 3 years to kind of bring it online with projects that are being developed regionally, updating the schedules, as well as an opportunity to add new projects that are coming out of the mobility plan into the TIP. And it's an opportunity to update the fiscal assumptions and cost updates for projects as well. And that is where we are. So kind of just what we're going to do on this is talk a little bit primarily about the call for projects and local program update, where we are with revenues, and we've worked regionally to develop a draft fiscally constrained list of local projects. That's always kind of the biggest challenge when we're doing this, is being able to constrain what is the ask versus what is the revenue available to fund projects moving forward through the fiscal years of the next TIP. Real quickly then, we'll have just another update on the programming policies. They're going to be tweaked a little bit with this program, and that really is just a minor change to the cost overrun presentation, as well as a slight change to the funding contingency reserve policy, and adding or acknowledging the CMAQ programming policy to align with the directives that TDOT has given us on the way that we're going to manage CMAQ programming going forward. Brief update on the schedule and any other questions that may come up. So this is the big picture of TPO directed revenues. These are kind of the three regional funds that are dedicated to the TPO that come to the area based on population here in the region. LSTBG is our largest funding program by a substantial amount, and that is a very flexible funding, can be used for a variety of projects. LSTBG TA, Transportation Alternatives. Those are funds that are, again, a smaller number, but largely you're going to see that for bike and pedestrian type projects, sidewalks, greenways, things of that nature. And then carbon reduction program is, as it states, carbon reduction. That operates similarly to the CMAQ program in that it's projects that should be used to reduce, as it says, carbon emissions in the region. Similar size program to the TAP program, but we'll see $120 million of revenue for the LSTBG program, $12.4 million of TAP program revenue, and carbon reduction about $10.9 million projected. We'll take a look at those expenditures and the contingency reserve again in some next slides, so I'll go ahead and proceed from there. The revised project programming, when we initially came in, so with what we're looking at programming, we've got 89.2 of LSTBG as a revised request. When those numbers initially came in, that was double that number almost, $171.6 million. Worked a lot with our partners. Largely what we're able to do is kind of taking a critical look at the schedules and what projects were going to be deliverable. And in this case, we kind of moved some construction that maybe we had some overly optimistic projections of construction that might have landed in 2029. And for the time being, we really realized that those dollars probably aren't going to be ready to go out onto the street in 2029. So they're outside of the program. That's where a lot of that adjustment came in, was just kind of addressing schedules and putting things in what's a more likely development time frame. The TAP program, relatively small adjustments there, and what we really had was the TAP program was over-programmed. Carbon reduction was kind of unsubscribed, and those projects have some similar eligibility, so really we just kind of split that funding for the most part amongst those, but also made some kind of time schedule adjustments as well. With fiscal constraint, all TPO-derived programs are fiscally constrained, and that is a requirement for the program. You can only program what you can anticipate to be able to afford within that time frame. The other thing that I will note, the last tip cycle that we did this 3 years ago, we were not able to add any new projects to the program due to fiscal constraint. This time, luckily, we were able to catch back up, and all revised candidate projects, after speaking to the local partners, we were able to program at least an initial phase of project development for all of the projects that came into us after discussion with the local partners. We do have a greater than 10% program contingency reserve for all of the TPO fund resources, and really a bit more than that on the STBG program. And we anticipate that this kind of more conservative approach to programming right now may allow us to have a midstream project call or potentially bring additional project phases in if they are able to kind of move along at an accelerated schedule. We may be able to move those in during the life of this tip cycle. Pardon me. But that would be pending future cost overrun totals. We're still in an environment where we're seeing a lot of cost overruns on projects, so that's something we have to be cognizant of as we program funds. I would also indicate that while that wasn't here on the slide, we also do include PM 2.5 CMAQ funding in the draft program, and that PM 2.5 is dedicated to the Knoxville region as the only eligible area in the state of Tennessee right now, but we do have to have kind of consultation with TDOT for oversight of programming authority on those projects. Real quickly here, just kind of, you've seen some tables similar to this. This is just kind of slating out that revenue and showing that there are balances in each of the years. If you have revenues, that's the annual revenues on the top line across for LSTBG funding. We've got carryover funding that would come in of about $65 million. So you've got a starting point of about $78 million in fiscal 26, and you have the proposed programming in that third line down. So show we've got a balance of $30 million in 2026, roughly $17 million in 27, $24 million in 28, and $31 million in 2029. Keep in mind that with a revenue total of about $120 million, we've got that contingency reserve amount proposed at 10% of $12 million, but we're roughly $20 million above that as far as headspace in the program, and we would anticipate that may allow us more flexibility going forward. Very similar for the TAP program. I'll not get into the tremendous details, but you'll see there, again, the revenues across on the top line. We've got a carryover revenue coming in of about $5.5 million, and you'll see that there is a positive balance on that bottom line, 3.5, 2.4, 3.9, and 4.9 out in the last year. And again, a smaller contingency reserve of $1.2 million. Very similar table here because it's a similar size program for the carbon reduction program. Speaking of revenue, and we've got a positive balance in each of the fiscal years, again, which is a requirement, and should have some greater flexibility within that if something's able to be moved forward. This is PM 2.5. Again, those outer years, I don't have figures on there just because that is in consultation with TDOT. The revenue figure would look similarly in those 27, 28, 29 years. So as a general rule, we would anticipate having some relatively significant funding to be able to program in consultation with TDOT for those dollar figures as we move forward. And again, those can be for cost overruns for existing CMAQ projects or potentially adding new funding to that. I know this is an opportunity we've talked about with CAT. Sometimes there's some opportunity for statewide funding on the CMAQ program that doesn't get utilized, that TDOT will come to us at the end of the fiscal year to asking us, hey, do you have any projects that can move forward? And a lot of times they're able to take advantage of that for capital projects. Revenues, I'm going to pause there for a moment, and I guess that revenue in your packet, there is a project table. This is the list of proposed projects based on that consultation with each of our local partners. So it is kind of by agency. You can kind of look across there. You'll see the projects that are included in there, and then as well as the phases and the fiscal years for the dollar figures that you see there. Those are the federal amounts that you see on those lines, and they have been grown by some inflation rates out to those fiscal years, trying to make sure that we're capturing an appropriate inflation out to that year in an effort to be caught with fewer cost overruns, hopefully, in those out years. So if you want to take a look at that, and while we're talking projects and funding, I'm going to pause for a moment before we transition to that next phase, just to give you a little update on some policy items that we're proposing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note that a lot of these items in the city of Knoxville is from the Reconnecting Communities
Correct.
grant, which is discretionary. It's, I guess it's reflected on here because it's connected to the regional transportation thing, but it's something we applied for and got, and hopefully we'll keep. We'll
Correct.
see.
Yeah, those are, they are included in the program right now. They've been added to the current tip. Until we hear otherwise, we are assuming that those dollars will continue to go forward as we, that's a possibility that those funds may
Well,
not
we're certainly
continue.
hoping the same.
We
We hope those investments will continue. And
Absolutely.
That's our expectation and hope.
Yep,
We'll
so
find
I'm showing those dollars as continued and certainly in consultation with engineering staff as well as KCDC on those projects. If there are no other project questions, and certainly we can double back to that if necessary. Just want to, the TIP programming policies that are in there, a couple small tweaks. We, in the past, had the delayed project policy to provide quarterly updates when that happened. With the project tracking meetings that we are doing with the local sponsors as well as TDOT have moved to twice annual. So we'd just like to kind of acknowledge that and move that to a twice annual report on obligation status. We kind of bring those up a lot of times when we're doing the cost overruns, present some information, but maybe I think some discussion of maybe doing something more formal with an annual, twice annual report on project status going forward is the intention there. So just want to kind of acknowledge that and try to make that more formally twice annual versus a quarterly discussion. And then on the cost overrun and funding contingency reserve, just a very small tweak to bring that. In the previous cycle, when we initially set this up, we did a 5% reserve. We found that was a not an adequate number. The last tip cycle, we moved that to 9%, and it really was based on a target of 10%, but we weren't able to fiscally constrain everything at 10%. We do have the ability to fiscally constrain at 10%, so we'd like to just acknowledge that the formal contingency reserve number is 10%, although in this case, we are significantly above that based on projections at this point. New project policy, no proposed changes to that, stays as it is, basically to say that we move forward with existing projects before we add new projects, essentially is what that says. Project rollover policy, no proposed changes there. Again, kind of a similar scenario there. And then new policy, the CMAQ programming, and this is one thing that does have some impact there. The TDOT direction on CMAQ programming in order to give them greater flexibility in obligating all of those funds statewide. What they have requested and what we acknowledge as being appropriate as well is that for CMAQ projects, NEPA and design funds will be initially programmed, but right-of-way and construction phases for those projects will not be formally programmed in the TIP until those phases become closer to notice to proceed to them, and that we will continue to, we'll show those future dollars either in the project notes or something to indicate that those are still committed dollars, but they aren't necessarily programmed in the given year, just to give greater flexibility statewide for the state. That is something that generally part of their programming of trying to be more competitive in the August redistribution of funds. They were much more successful in that based on some policies that they had instituted last year and brought additional federal revenues to the state of Tennessee, which is always a good thing. So we want to continue to cooperate with them on that. In this case, I think that would apply to, I think there's two projects. The Broadway bus signal preemption project, the construction phase for that will be noted as a reserved funding, but it won't have construction programmed at this point. And I believe there is a signal project for Oak Ridge as well. Their ATMS project phase 3 would be the other one that wouldn't currently have construction program funding because it's not in the first year of the program. I will pause for a moment if there are any questions on that. And if not, the only thing is just a little bit of a quick look at where we're going. Still in discussions with TDOT on their list of projects and any final program revisions that we may have for projects. We would anticipate getting a draft tip to TDOT for review in June. We'll talk about later. We're anticipating potentially not having, or I think there may not be tech or executive board meetings in June, and the draft tip document would come back to us in July for consideration. That's online to have the document adopted in October. The review process, then federal approval would occur in just after the first of the year, and those fiscal year 26 funds that would be programmed would then be available to projects. And that is all I have for now. If there are any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Thank you, Craig.
I said I'm glad that we were able to bring new projects into the fold this time after having to be kind of grinchy last time. So,
Thanks, Greg. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the supplemental Safe Streets and Roads for All Safety Plan for Anderson County. This item does require executive board approval. I'm going to go ahead and read the caption. The TPO is awarded a supplemental safety plan grant in the Federal Highway Administration Safe Streets and Roads for All year 2023 funding round to expand our regional roadway safety action plan to include all of Anderson County beyond just the TPO planning area portion. The study was recently completed by the same consultant and will be added as an appendix to the TPO regional safety plan following executive board endorsement. And this item was unanimously approved by the technical committee unanimously recommended approval. So, Jonah, would you please take it over?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, the TPO was awarded $30,000 for a supplemental safety plan back in 2023. That resulted in the Regional Roadway Safety Action Plan. It was funding round of that $30,000 that broke down into $24,000 federal with a $6,000 local match. And again, the purpose of this plan is that original regional roadway safety action plan only included the TPO planning area. This additional plan is going to expand that to cover the entirety of Anderson County. And this grant was administered through, we administered through the FHWA on behalf of the Anderson County Highway Department. So again, this will be incorporating or including unincorporated Anderson County, plus the small cities of Norris and Rocky Top. It does exclude all state routes and I-75. We went through a public input process, and that involved developing a project website on Social Pinpoint. We had an interactive safety map that you can see to the right there. Members of the public were able to just kind of drop pins where they had areas of concern and make comments there. The Highway Department also conducted 2 public meetings. And then we conducted a crash analysis, and that primarily utilized the TDOT AASHTO safety platform, which aggregates crash data based on police reports, and that helped us to identify severe crashes and patterns with those crashes. And that used the same time frame as the original Regional Roadway Safety Plan, which was a 5+ year period from 2016 to September 2021. So what we found is there were a few common themes in the public input. Roadway safety and visibility. Residents continuously suggested improved signage, reflectors, and guardrails. Speeding and enforcement was also a big issue. Residents reported high-speed passing and general lack of enforcement. And they suggested lowering speed limits. To go along with that, some context behind the crash factors that we were looking at. Over half of serious crashes occurred on roadways with a 45-mile-per-hour posted speed limit, and 65% of crashes were single vehicle, meaning they either ran off the road into a ditch or into a fixed object. So that definitely backs up what we were hearing in the public input, that speeding is a big factor. We identified 11 priority roadway segments and ranked these by factors such as severity, amount of public input, and equity. We looked at disadvantaged communities data and overlaid that onto the maps to identify those corridors. Information provided for each segment included primary crash types and recommended treatments. So here you can see in that table on the right, proposed treatments and that percentage crash relevance that just basically shows how many of the crashes on that corridor each treatment would address, essentially. So that's just an example of the corridors that we're looking at. So we are requesting endorsement of the SS4A safety plan for Anderson County. It would be posted to the TPO website alongside the original Regional Roadway Safety Action Plan. It would enable Anderson County to apply for an SS4A implementation grant. For example, the SS4A FY25 notice funding opportunity with a deadline coming up here in June on the 26th. That includes $1 billion, $700 million for investment or implementation, and $300 million for planning. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Jonah. So as I said, this does require a vote by this board. So all in favor, please say aye.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry about that. So we have a motion by Mayor Williams and a second by Mayor Frank. Thank you for catching me on that. Now, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Moving on to the TDOT and Federal High Administration updates.
Hey, good morning. Stacey Morrison with TDOT Planning. We've had several updates regarding the release of the 10-year plan, and I think the final release was like right at the day of the last meeting that we had. So I'm just going to hit some highlights of that real quick. So there was two phases of the 10-year plan. You saw the draft, and then there was the final state budget, which included some additional dollars for the department and projects. So I want to hit that. So the final approved budget included $80 million in reoccurring and $1 billion in non-reoccurring dollars. So the reoccurring fund dollars are made possible by reallocating a portion of the existing tire sales tax revenue to TDOT. Those additional funds will allow us to apply those towards new projects in the plan as well. The $80 million reoccurring will go towards pavement preservation, bridge preservation, our mowing and litter program, a spot safety program, as well as rural service patrol. So the help trucks that you see, primarily in the urban areas, those will be extended throughout all of the interstate corridors across the state as a part of that reoccurring dollars. So safety is always the number one goal there. So the $1 billion non-reoccurring for additional projects, one-time investment, pavement, bridges, and spot safety as well. There's also $50 million that will go into the state infrastructure fund. So that's managed through Tennessee Local Development Authority. That'll be a program that'll be allowed for to get some low interest loans for transportation projects across the state. Could use those also towards statewide partnership as well. So that's a new program that's added as well. So there's 96 projects in our 2025 10-year plan. So the April, there was 12 new projects added from, our first 10-year plan was last year. So there's 12 new. And then the second phase that we just saw added in May were the 11 additional projects were included in that. So 23 new projects overall in the new plan. All that information is on the website. I just want to note that, because I've had this question a few times, there's limited information when you see the project descriptions on there. And so if you do need additional information on the project, just, please reach out. We can give you some additional details because those descriptions are very, very small. And I've already had a few questions across the state, making sure that some additional changes there's some of those that were existing projects and information that was already on there. So some of those have been expanded, added additional items and things like that from the original project. So just make sure that you understand that the information is limited on the website, but if you need additional information, please let us know. Again, all that information is there on our Build With Us website, so it's all updated and current with all the project information. So
I was going to add, unless you were going to cover this, when they came out with a new plan, our area did get two new projects added on, which was the Watt Road interchange on I-40 and the Campbell Station Road interchange. Both pretty big ticket items. The Watt Road is at $142 million and the Campbell Station $120 million. I know both of those two projects were pretty important to several of the mayors on here, so we're really glad to see those come back on. We still, I think, from the original 10-year plan, got maybe about eight or nine projects knocked back, which was disappointing, but we're glad these two came back on. So we tell your superiors we appreciate that.
You bet. And I briefly mentioned statewide partnership. We're working on getting that released this summer, as we've done in the last couple of years. So the statewide partnership program will be back out. You all had some projects in that last time that are part of the new plan as well. So we appreciate the partnership on those projects as well. So that'll be coming this summer. We'll go through the evaluation process through the rest of the year, and those will be part of the next 10-year plan as well. We're also working on our long-range plan, so we'll look for a cooperative effort with everybody on that. We'll be, going around doing presentations and getting feedback for our overall statewide long-range plan as well. So, no questions. Thank you all.
Thank you. Is there anyone from Federal Highway Administration here? Nope.
Mr. Chairman, I will notice that, again, the three planners technically that we had assigned to Tennessee did all take a buyout. Some folks have been reassigned, and we're still working with them. We're not fully sure what that will entail. We've got a lot of things like our UPWPs and the tips that are coming that we have to run through those folks for review. So they've reassigned some folks. So you got some folks doing some double duty and things like that right now, but we're working with them very closely. Thank you.
Thanks for that update. So on to other business. Two things, the TPO Technical Committee meeting January 10th, 2025 at 9 a.m. in the small assembly room here in the City County Building. Then this board will meet on Wednesday, June 25th at 9 a.m. also here in this room. Doug, is there anything else?
Yeah, we did have, when we posted on here, we weren't at that time decided that we were going to have our June meeting. So we're going to cancel our June meetings, give everyone a month off. So the next ones will be in July. We'll send you an email out to remind you of that and give you the next dates. The only other thing I wanted just to bring up is that CAT had their federal triennial review. It's very much like our TPO certification where the federal government really brings the microscope in, and they did very well. I don't want to overspeak, but I think a perfect. Yeah, perfect. And that's they've had several in a row like that. And I participate, the TPO has a very small part. They ask about the tip and some stuff, but they did a great job. I participate on these with CAC and ETHRA also. And to have 3 perfect ones in a row is really unheard of. So congratulations. 5. Oh, wow, 5. That's terrific.
That's awesome. Do any other board members have any other business to bring before the body? Yes, Mayor Frank?
I just wanted to quickly thank the TPO team for the work on the safety action plan. We've never had anything like that before, and it's really excellent to see that information and data, and I'm very appreciative.
Mike Conger did most of that, and he's on vacation in Europe, but we'll let him know when he gets back that you appreciate it.
Anybody else? Okay, on to the public comment section. Members of the public may address the executive board with a 5-minute time limit per each person. Would anybody like to address this board? Seeing no one, with this meeting stands adjourned without objection. All right, thank you all so very much. Have a great day.